Hello everybody, this is Chris Bird or MonkeyDude1313, and this is a nearly completed master set of Neo Destiny. We are 4 cards away. Which 4 are those? Let's find out. This is one of my favorite sets of all time. The cards are extremely hard to come by, and even harder in good condition. So this is a binder I am incredibly proud of. Normally we'd start our sets off with first edition, but for the sake of video and pacing, I've decided we start with Unlimited and then transition into first edition. In this case, we also store Neo Revelation in the binder along with it. And as you can see, we have the Shining Gyarados and Magikarp there, but they're unlimited. So a little bit of proof that we store them first edition first and then Unlimited. But why is this binder here? This is our recently replaced Charizard binder, and Neo Destiny has Charizards in it, despite having no Charmander or Charmeleon. I wonder what that means. So let's immediately squash that mystery and go and pull out the cards that are relevant for Neo Destiny. So first we can see here that we have some Gym Challenge stuff. We have our Neo Destiny Shining Charizards in both first edition and Unlimited, and then our LC Charizards here. But the star of the show that we care about is this Shining Charizard first edition, and then this Shining Charizard Unlimited. Beautiful cards. I absolutely love these guys. But that's all we need from the Charizard binder for today. So I will set these guys off to the side after a little bit of ooh, and we will get to these guys when we get to them. So, starting with the Unlimiteds, we get to see a full picture. We have completely finished the Unlimited version of Neo Destiny. And so that includes Dark Espeon, which I will pull out and give you a nice long look at. It's got a nice little ear swirl there, and is otherwise an extremely fantastic card. There might be a little bit of spoilers, but I will let you piece together why that might be as the video goes on. But absolutely beautiful cards. Some of these cards in this set were collected by us 15 years ago, some of them 10 years ago, and some of them over the last year. So we got a mix and match. The cards we pick up recently, we're really looking for LP or better. We really care about near mint or better if we can, but you're not going to see these cards all that often, so we are very okay with accepting LP. And depending on the specific card itself, we might go either down to LP minus or up to near mint minimum. But fantastic cards here. I specifically like Dark Houndoom. I like Dark Gengar. This Caesar is pretty sick. Got the Dark here as well. And then on this first flip here, we get to see a bunch of the lights. Light Arcanine and Light Dragonite are two of my favorites as well. These cards are beautiful. And I would love to just pull out every single one and say how fantastic and wonderful they are, but you can see it for yourself. They speak for themselves, I believe. Miracle Energy, continuing the trend of the Neo sets, where at least one of the Holos is is Holo. If you go back to Neo Genesis, where they first revealed the Steel and Dark type, that set had a shiny Steel Energy. So we got a bunch of fantastic Holos and a Miracle Energy in this case. The set features a lot of Pokemon that have a light and dark theming, as I've pointed out before, and the way they've kind of set it up is that the light Pokemon generally have more HP, they're generally more supportive or healing oriented, and then the dark Pokemon, like Executor and Haunter here, have lower HPs compared to what you'd expect from a Stage 1, or in their case, whatever Pokemon it is, and are generally more aggressive. So you're going to see lower energy costs, higher damage, and lower HP. Kind of a fun theme, but also you'll notice that the basic Pokemon, literally 0 of the basic Pokemon have light or dark in front of their name. Togepi is not light or dark Togepi, although it does evolve into the Togetic we saw earlier, which is light. So why might that be? Well, around this time, they had already released the Team Rocket set as the 4th set in the TCG, which had dark Pokemon in it. And their justification for that was Pokemon are not born corrupted or light or dark or anything. It really takes the influence of their environment and their trainers and everything to really shape what they become. And so in Team Rocket, all of the Pokemon were either normal or dark. And if they're dark, it's because they were part of an evil organization that caused problems and that they used the Pokemon to help them cause more problems. And in this case, they continued that, where the dark Pokemon have been influenced by their surroundings and their trainers and everything to become dark and evil. Or they've been influenced by their surroundings and trainers to be very positive. And so Pokemon that are owned by, let's say, a Pokemon Center lady might end up as a light Pokemon because they spend so much of their effort trying to do good for themselves and for the world. Who knows? But I think that's a really cool way to look at it. I want to specifically point out this specific Vulpix, absolutely adorable card here. And I want to point out this radio tower as well, where there's got a really cool cameo from a Meowth balloon there. And that kind of fits in with the dark Pokemon theming like I was talking about. Very nice. This Broken Ground Gym was a big problem in the meta at the time, but this card is actually worth a decent amount because of how playable it was. And it's got a sad little Elekid on there, and it's an art by Tomokazu Kamiya, someone who I did a featured Friday on. Beautiful. But let's flip the page here and see the first, or the, I guess, third of the grand reveals, given the unlimited holos here. We flip the page, and we get to see all of the Shinings in this set. This is the second set with Shinings, and as I hinted at earlier, Neo Revelation, the set before, was actually the first set with Shinings that had Shining Magikarp and Gyarados, and they either decided that was so popular, or they had already decided they were going to do it. They released a bunch of Shining cards in Neo Destiny. So before I start pulling them out, this energy here is where that Shining Charizard that we looked at earlier, the unlimited Shining Charizard, gets put into the binder. So this is what the full spread of Shinings looks like. Get a nice breath of it, a nice good feel for all the Shinings here. And if you want to, you can imagine that we have a Koro Mew. Even though it was only released in Japan, it does have the Neo Destiny signal on it, or the little set symbol, sorry, and it is considered a Shining Pokemon. So if you're collecting the Japanese equivalent of this set, you will need that Koro Mew to have a full set. And I really want to get one just to finish the Shinings, even though it never came out in English. But for now, I am very, very content with having the Neo Destiny English versions. So let's go through, we'll pull out some of these cards and have a nice, deeper look at them. Shining Celebi, fantastic card. And you can see here how they decided to do the holo. So the Pokemon itself is made up of texture and holo pattern on that texture, and then the rest of the picture here has no shininess to it. And unfortunately, given Celebi specifically, very hard to show the Celebi outline and stuff without full-on glare. Because when you get the coolest view of it, like that one right there, you end up with a lot of glare on the sleeve as well. So we actually picked this up within the last year. A vendor that we really like to go to had this as the biggest card in his case, and even though it was the second table we had stopped at for the day, usually we try and get a good feel for what's available at the show before we start dropping thousands of dollars, he had this, very good condition. He's a great guy. He had it priced reasonably, so we just did it for sticker. Very hard to pass up on a card like this in such good condition. Next up, similar story. We have the Shining Charizard here. I know I've already done a little turnaround on it before. The Pokemon itself is shiny, and I can show here that there's actually 3 stars in the rarity, and it goes past the set number. So the Shining Magikarp and Gyarados did that in Revelation, and all the Shinings here, of course, do that. But the first time that happened officially was in Team Rocket, where they had the Dark Raichu, which was 83 out of 82. If you've seen any one of the 4 DPM videos where he's tried to complete Team Rocket, you will notice that he's noticed that as well. But this Charizard is fantastic. Similar to the Celebi, we found a vendor relatively early on in a show who had this guy in Unlimited. Very, very solid condition, and his ask was a little bit over what I wanted to pay, and so we were able to work it down just a little bit. But fantastic card. This was the second to last Shining we needed to finish the Unlimited collection. Next up, a less popular but still an awesome Pokemon, Shining Kabutops. This guy looks fantastic, especially when you can get the light just right. Although, the way they did the holo pattern, if you're not looking at it perfectly, if you're looking at it something like that, it looks kind of like he might be facing that way. But then when you get it correctly into the light, you can see that his eye is actually on the right side, and he's facing that way instead. But the card is absolutely fantastic. And then this, plus all the rest of these Shinings, we picked up over 10 years ago, and we paid $37 for this Shining Raichu. How lucky is that? We paid a whopping $45 for this Shining Mewtwo, and he is in stunning, stunning condition as well. This is one of the fan favorites of the Shinings, and what I like is if you can put it right there, the glare right there on the edge, it really looks like he's casting some kind of psychic or energy attack, which I think is absolutely beautiful. I am in love with these cards. These are some of my favorite cards of all time, and I am just thrilled to have a set of these guys. Very, very, very nice art indeed. Next up, Shining Noctowl, tied with Steelix for the least popular of the Shinings. But what I want to point out on this guy, and I'll show it again on the Steelix when we get there, is since Noctowl and Steelix are fairly one-dimensional, not in terms of like Pokemon development or anything, but they're just kind of shape. Like, this is Noctowl's head only. You can see a tiny bit of his shoulders, but he is a sphere with a tiny little beak, and then he's got these big head things, which are supposed to be kind of level on his face. So the way they still added some depth despite it is by making the texture on the head and thing here, the crown, I guess, by making it a different, like, direction. And so by putting it in different lights, you can get different parts of it to light up, and that will really give you an idea for how the Pokemon is set up. Wow, my autofocus is not happy with that. But here you can see kind of like one plane in the shiny. Here you can see another. And then here, where was it? The one with the eyes. That's another one. So I thought that was a really cool way of abusing the texture on the card and the shiny pattern in order to give a little bit more depth to an otherwise kind of standard shaped Pokemon body. Very, very cool indeed. So I mentioned that I spent $37 on this guy. I actually bought two of them at the same time for around the same price because the first one I picked up was a worse condition than I wanted. I picked both of them up on eBay, and of course you can only see so much out of an eBay listing, plus this was over 10 years ago. So getting good pictures is a lot more of a standard now, and of course most people are selling these graded now instead of raw. So absolutely beautiful card here. Raichu's a very popular Pokemon, mostly because Pikachu's a popular Pokemon, but how can you be upset with a Shining Raichu card? Alright. Last but not, or second to last, and arguably least question mark? I don't know. They're all good dogs, Brent. This is Shining Steelix, and I'd like to use him as another example of how they used the textures to show depth and shape on a Pokemon that's otherwise fairly geometrical. So, front of face, really edge highlighting there, and then giving you a lot of nice look at the body. Then up here you can see that type of the face. This is the shadowed parts over here now being lit up. And then the third angle is, where is it? Kind of hard to get to. That gives you a better look of the face and what Coop doesn't like about the mouth open Steelix. There you go. There's the third angle. And it does kind of feel like you're taking the Pokemon and you're moving a light source around to get different highlighted sections of it. Very nice indeed. Okay, so we are 13 minutes in. I've said a lot of amazing things about the set, not because I'm amazing, but because the set is amazing. But let's get in to the very rare part of the set, even rarer than the normals, is the first editions. So, just to give a little bit of an idea, this card in Near Mint now is going for like $1,400. Absolutely wild. Back in the day, this was a 1 in every 3 packs type card. Not specifically the Gengar, but Holos were 1 in every 3 packs. So every about $12 to $15 you would spend, you would get one of these absolutely beautiful first edition Holos. I should put an asterisk on that. The $3 to $4 was for the unlimited packs. All of my local stores at the time, way back when I was opening these packs, had them at plus $1 if you want the first edition. And I was the type of kid who thought, well, I could either get one first edition pack for $4, or I could save up $2 more and get 2 packs of unlimited. And so the math just worked out in my small child brain, where always buy unlimited because you can get more cards. And of course at the time, more cards equals more good, which I think is fair to say in a decent amount of situations. But given the price and rarity of these cards now, maybe there's something to be said for throwing the extra dollar at a first ed pack. But kids in the day were not buying as an investment. They did not care about the money. They cared about having enough to buy at least 1 pack. All right, enough babble. This is where I'm going to pull out all of the Holos, and you can see why I pulled out that Dark Espeon earlier. This is one of the 4 cards we're missing, Dark Espeon First Edition. We have seen 3 or 4 copies that we've really liked, but they have gotten away from us for one reason or another. Some of them eBay auctions, some of them being kind of locally outbid by people at card shows, but we're still really hunting for this guy. And this is one of my partner's favorite Pokemon and one of their favorite cards of that Pokemon, so we are being more picky about this card than we would about most of these other ones. Cards like this Dark Ampharos and a few other of the cards that I'll mention when I pull them out came out of someone's collection and then were sold to a single vendor who then sold them to me as a big bunch. I think we picked up 5 of them along with an LC Reverse Dark Blastoise. Fantastic cards. And so these cards are like super duper duper minty. Like there's a little bit of whitening here, but this is an otherwise fantastic card, and I absolutely love it. But given the history that it had, something like these white dots appear to me much more of a factory error than they are of a person who bought it or stored it error. And another thing I really appreciated about this, aside from the amazing swirl right there in the corner, is that there's basically no silvering on the edges of these cards. These cards were very, very prone to silvering, and so this little lot that I found did not suffer a lot from that. Moving on, Dark Crobat. This one we bought like 11 years ago because I accidentally picked this up instead of an unlimited one. It wasn't until the last 2 years, I'll say at this point, that we were even considering collecting a master set of literally every Pokemon set. And that includes, in this case, first edition and unlimited. And so we were focusing most of our efforts on just completing the unlimited sets, because this is just a first edition stamp, right guys? What could be such a big deal about it? And so this one was from one we bought, and of course we bought it thinking it was unlimited. It came in first edition, and this is just worth more than the unlimited, so we never complained. And we're kind of happy we did that, meaning didn't complain. This card I think is fantastic. They do a lot of Crobat art, but since he's a relatively like monopose Pokemon, meaning his body doesn't really move much. He's really just a combination of 4 wings and a mouth. And so putting him in a different environment is what makes Crobat a more interesting Pokemon to me, rather than trying to change up the poses. And putting him in front of a planet or moon or big star or whatever that might be, I think is very, very cool. All right, Dark Donphan. This card was not in that big lot we picked up. Still a fantastic card, but here's where you can see a decent amount of silvering on the edges of cards. So actually, to prove that, let me pull this guy out real quick here, while still being very gentle because these cards are crazy right now. But you can really see, if you look on the edges, up here is what I'm talking about with silvering on some of these cards. And here you can see it really well on the left side here, where so many cards from this era have silvering on the borders, to the point where a lot of people will not judge down a card if it has silvering on the borders, because oftentimes it just kind of came out of the pack that way. But I love this card, as I do the rest of the set, and the story behind this one is we did pick it up in the past year. He had it marked as if it were near mint plus. Really, he was saying that he thinks it would like 10. But we pointed out the silvering and we pointed out a few other things, and we ended up getting it for a more reasonable price for that card. All right, skipping over the Dark Espeon we don't have, we can pull out this Dark Feraligatr. Beautiful card. Compared to the other Feraligatr prints that they gave us in the Neo series, I think this is the best art that they've given us there. Comparable to the Feraligatr, specifically the swimming Feraligatr from Expedition, the other Feraligatr in Expedition was very, very doofy. Fantastic card here. We picked this up for about $200. Very, very near mint. Beautiful card here. Wow. I don't know. Sometimes I'm at a loss for words with these cards just because of how beautiful they are. We did pick it up at a local show, and I was on the fence about picking it up because I personally thought it was worth a little bit less than this, but vendor stuck to his guns, and so I went with it. This card, beautiful. Very, very happy in hindsight I picked it up at that price. All right, this Dark Gengar, first edition, Neo Destiny, very near mint. This card is worth a stupid amount of money. I'm not going to say what I paid for it, but it was basically 4 digits. I got this from a vendor who we have done many, many, many deals with. He is one of our top providers of Gen 3 reverses these days, to the point where now we're only needing about 10 reverses from Gen 3. Pretty crazy indeed, but this card is absolutely beautiful. We picked it up with a lot of about 20 Gen 3 reverses, and the entire order was crazy big. We were originally thinking about doing it for a trade for our half-art poncho in a 10, but we decided against it and just went straight cash instead. beautiful card here. Wow. All right. Next up, got to handle things with care. Very important. This Dark Houndoom came out of the same lot with the Dark Ampharos, and it again is very, very minty. Beautiful art here. I just am in love with these arts, dude. It's crazy. Fantastic card. Fantastic indeed. Nice. Houndoom was very, very popular at the time, and he's been a little bit outshone in terms of popularity by some of the newer angsty type Pokemon, but he was kind of the angsty mon of the time. Dark Porygon 2. We got this one very, very recently because we could not find it anywhere. There's a nice little swirl here. We actually cracked it out of a CGC slab. When we buy online, which isn't super often, buying graded sometimes just makes more sense because you don't get to actually hold the card in your hands before you buy. And so one of the things we love about card shows is that if someone had this sitting in their case, we can see that we need it, cross-reference with our sheet, and then we can actually pick it up and inspect, make sure we're happy with it. In this case, though, we got it off of eBay for a very good deal, actually. And the best we could do was look at the scans on the CGC website, which do quite a lot, but unfortunately, a lot of the time scans from basically any of the grading companies will accidentally hide the silvering on the edge of cards, because in order to hold the card in place, they put a very, very gentle plastic border on it, and then you can't see stuff like the silvering on the edge of the card. We got a little bit there, which we would have noticed if we bought it in person, but that's fine. Still very happy with the condition of this Dark Porygon 2. This Dark Caesar, boy howdy. In terms of TCG player market price, this card was the first of all the Neo Destiny First Ed Holos to actually be appropriately approximated by TCG player. Generally, I recommend going against TCG player price for some of these old Grail cards because TCG player has very little sales data, and if they don't have any near mint sales for a long time, they will literally just say market price is the LP copy. And so that's very unrealistic. And so with some of these cards, you would want to go on eBay sales, look for cards of similar condition, and try and figure out the appropriate price. Or, if you really can't find any sales data anywhere, you don't go to price charting. Price charting's terrible. You actually go to speculative grading, which I hate. I do not like speculative grading, but really, how are you going to judge the approximate value of an incredibly expensive card when there's so few sales? And if you and the vendor you're working with look at the card and decide, you know what, there's a very solid chance this would 7, or a solid chance this would 8, then you go around that price as your starting point and try and work something out. So really, as much as I don't like doing speculative grading sometimes, it is just the way to go. So we got this from We Are Nerds. We got it raw, we did not get it slabbed, and the price, similar to the Gengar, was very, very high. But I think for a card like this, it's absolutely worth it. Beautiful. We got a little partial swirl up there in the corner. Very nice indeed. All right, so next flip to the rest of the holos here, and now I finally get to pull out some of these guys. This Dark Typhlosion is very warpy, but that is okay. Otherwise, this Typhlosion is in fantastic condition. It's got a tiny, tiny little bit of a bend up there, but that is okay. We actually bought this card in significantly worse condition and then needed a condition upgrade later. Beautiful card indeed. I prefer the Dark Feraligatr over the Dark Typhlosion, but what can you do? There is no Meganium in the set to compare to. You just got the Angry Typhlosion and Feraligatr. I wonder if they did that because they ran out of spaces for light Pokemon, because I think you would have put light Meganium in there. Dark Tyranitar, one of the arguably most valuable of the Neo Destiny First Editions. I don't really like to talk about the money aspect so much, but finding nice copies of these cards, I mostly care about binder appeal, but the back needs to also be nice, not nice looks-wise necessarily, but it can't just be completely destroyed, because that will partially indicate how it was handled in the past. And so some of these cards, unfortunately, I've had to look up the value of them so many times to try and figure out if what I'm paying for them is the correct price, that I end up getting a little bit money-minded in some of these cases. I always thought this art from forever ago looked kind of squatty, and I know they're trying to make him like lunging forward and biting at something, but he looks a little squatty and round compared to the standard Tyranitar. But if you look at Tyranitar's sprites from a bunch of the video games, it makes some sense. It makes a lot of sense indeed. So we got this from a local vendor, Wallace. Fantastic guy. he just decided to bring a ton of Tyrannotars that day, so he picked this up along with the Neo Discovery First Edition Tyranitar and a couple of other Tyrannotars. Very nice. Light Arcanine. This was part of the bundle with the Dark Ampharos, and this card is beautiful. I love the flowers in the background here, and I feel like they threw in the flowers to try and make it a little bit more of a light Pokemon, because there's so many depictions of Arcanine being angry and being a very fast boy. So I think adding the flowers in and emphasizing his fluffiness really helps make him into a light Pokemon. I wonder how much they chose to make Arcanine light was because of Officer Jenny in the anime back in the day, where she had a ton of Growliths, and of course if you're doing good-hearted citizen-first police work, it would make sense that your Pokemon becomes light instead of dark. Alright, Light Azumarill, one of the ones we got quite a while ago. It's a nice, beautiful card indeed. And this is a Yukimori art, so of course it is well sought after, mostly for the artist rather than the Pokemon itself, but I think this card is quite beautiful as well. Very, very nice. Light Dragonite. We got this from the same guy as we got the Dark Gengar, but at a very different time. And we almost bought an MP copy of this, and at the beginning of the show we saw it. We really liked it, but we decided, you know what, we'll wait. We'll think about it as we look through the rest of the show. And we decided at the very end, okay, fine, we'll go back and get it. And he had already sold it. And so as much as that was disappointing, and we could have just bought it at the beginning of the show and been done with it, as we were in that situation where we couldn't get it, we ended up finding this much better copy. And so I'm quite happy that the universe decided we were going to wait that day on the Light Dragonite. Fantastic art, fantastic card, beautiful. Light Togetic is up next. We passed on a couple copies of these because of a lot of silvering issues, but we finally found this copy that is quite beautiful. Very nice Light Togetic. Not too much to say, although this is one of the cards here where they've kind of made the background into a vibe background rather than actually showing something. And the example I'll give is these are showing flowers. These are showing flames. But this one is more of a color, kind of like a color haze. So it's not flying in front of clouds, it's not flying in front of a mountain or a house or an ocean or whatever, it's just kind of flying in front of calming and pleasing colors. Another style that they've liked to go to from time to time. Alright, I mentioned it before, but I'm not forsaking it now. Miracle Energy. Got a very nice swirl down here on the bottom. Fantastic copy. We were absolutely not expecting to find this card when we did. In fact, we were so busy looking for team-up, expensive cards at the time, that we almost passed up on this guy. But luckily I spotted it in the back, saw the first edition stamp, and realized we needed to pick that up. Nice card, another vibes background like I was just talking about, but otherwise not too much to say here. Solid card. Alright, before I go too much farther, we were missing Dark Slowking, Light Machamp, and a few of the other rare non-holos from this set, almost until the very, very end. Like, I think this Dark Slowbro and the Machamp were part of a small lot that we got at a local show where we were now down to missing less than 10 cards, and some of these non-holo rares were the hardest ones to find in conditions we were happy with. And part of that is because, from back in the day, if someone got a non-holo, they were less excited than a holo, and so they took less care of it. Some of these cards were quite playable, and then some of these cards have like very interesting Tomokazu Kamiya arts, so they're more expensive, and that means that buying a cheaper copy, meaning in line with the other non-holo rares, means you're getting a severe condition downgrade. And so we were on the hunt for a very, very long time for these, and people just aren't opening Neo Destiny packs anymore. And that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, because why would you buy a Neo Destiny pack with the intent on opening it if it's heavy? And these cards are what make the pack not heavy. So we don't even have new trickles of these non-holo rares into the market unless someone gets very unlucky, a pack weighs heavy, they open it and it's not heavy anymore. So we were waiting on some of these non-holo rares for a long time, and someone who had said that they were a first-time vendor, I couldn't tell if they were also saying that this was their first sale ever or not, but they were at least a first-time vendor, and they had opened up their collection as a kid and brought in, and they had a ton of these Neo Destiny First Edition non-holo rares. And so it was great to work through. We shared a lot of good memories and talked about the cards, and he just kept wanting to throw deals at me, but I wanted to make sure he was getting paid what these cards are worth. So it's kind of like the opposite of what you would expect from standard bartering, where he's trying to convince me to take it for less, and I'm trying to convince him that it's worth more and he should get more out of it. So kind of a wholesome interaction there, but it was just really nice to meet someone who collected these cards back in the day and really appreciated them. All right, so now we're into the non-holo uncommons. Again, this Haunter, absolutely fantastic art there. But let's get through to a lot of the people's Grail cards. I know we already went through the Shining Unlimiteds, but the Shining First Editions are some of the grailiest grails in all of Pokemon. And this last flip will show you the ones we have so far. You can already see 3 holes, but let me pull out this energy first. I will throw our Shining Charizard First Edition in there, and then you can see that we are missing these 3 cards. This one is Shining Kabutops, this one is Shining Steelix, and this one is Shining Mewtwo. So unfortunately, the Shining Mewtwo is going to be very, very expensive when we finally find one, but that's okay. This set of Shinings has a little bit of a nicer spread of stories than the Unlimiteds. The Unlimiteds were a lot of, we found this at a vendor, we worked out a great deal, we had a great time with the vendor, made sure we both win, blah, blah, blah. Some of these ones, we didn't have to buy. And there's a little bit of an asterisk on that, but let me first pull out the Shining Celebi First Edition. As my partner opened a box of Expedition back in the day, they also opened quite a few packs of Neo Destiny. They got their hands on the first edition packs because they had a card shop. And even though the card shop was mostly sports cards, she opened a bunch of Pokemon card packs that they also had for sale. And she pulled the Shining Celebi First Edition and held on to it. So even though this card is a tremendous grail card for a lot of people, we did not have to worry about spending money on it. So it's very nice not only to have the card, but also we have the nostalgia and the memories along with it. And so that kind of connection to specific copies of cards is really appealing to me. And on top of that, it doesn't have to be the shiny stuff. It can be all sorts of other cards. But having the nostalgia and memory effect on a clean copy of a Grail card is just chef's kiss in terms of collecting to me, where we would never sell this. We would never sell this. There is just far too much nostalgia and sentiment and value on it external to money that this would just never get stolen. This would never get sold. All right. Also will never get stolen, by the way. Next up, Shining Charizard First Edition, exact same story. She opened this way back in the day. Absolutely beautiful copy of one of the most expensive cards of all time. Charizard is my favorite Pokemon, and so that's why I have the Charizard binder. I store everything else basically in the sets themselves, but I wanted to keep the Charizard separate because they are my favorite Pokemon, and so having the same story and on the Shining Charizard First Edition is absolutely wonderful. I could just rant and rave about this. Some people think the rant and rave is a negative thing, but it's more of I could just talk for hours about this kind of card and the kind of sentiment and nostalgia that people go through with these. But absolutely beautiful copy of a fantastic card. Okay, so I already mentioned Shining Kabutops, Shining Mewtwo. This Noctowl is a card that we actually had to buy recently. And there's a kind of an interesting story about it. Back in November of 2025, which is about 6 months ago at this point, we had finished going to one of the largest shows in our area. We had found a lot of great cards, talked to a lot of fantastic vendors and other collectors, and we thought we were done for the day. So we were heading for the front door, and we had already looked at this Shining Noctowl earlier in the show and decided to pass on it. The reason we passed on it was not condition. There was other things going on there, but we just couldn't get a deal to work out. So as we were going to the end of doors to leave the show, the vendor called me over and was trying to get me to buy this, and he ended up giving me a deal good enough that I could not refuse. So very happy we ended up with this. It's another fantastic copy. I would say a minimum of a 9, but maybe even a 10. And we got it for a very good deal, and he was very happy to get this out of his case. Part of the issue with these cards at card shows, especially raw, is there's not a huge market for them in person. Think about it this way. If you have an Italian Dragonite from Fossil First Edition, how many people are going to buy it? Well, if you're in a place that speaks English and you're far away from a place that even sold Italian cards back in the day, you might not even realize at first glance that it's Italian. But as soon as you do, it feels like, well, I was hoping for the English copy. And so finding someone who wants an Italian first edition Dragonite from Fossil is very difficult. And so for cards like that, it's way easier to move them on a site like eBay, because someone who specifically wants the Italian version will search through eBay for it and find your copy. But at a card show, people know Italian copies of these cards are very unlikely to sell, so vendors don't bring them. And then buyers know that finding an Italian copy of that card at a show is very, very low, and so they usually won't even be looking. And in a lot of those cases, the people will have already gone to eBay anyway, knowing that local card shows are unlikely to have it. So similar with these super high-end grails that are raw, and of the lesser popular ones, like Shining Charizard First Editions come to shows a lot. Relatively a lot. Not that often, but more often than Shining Noctowls do. And so there is a certain amount of opportunity cost that the vendor will pay to bring it, and an opportunity cost that the buyer will pay to find it at a show. And so that's what makes vendors a little bit more flexible on some of these cards, is this has been sitting in my case for over a year. No one has bought it from me. Yes, it's appreciated in value, but I'd really rather have XYZ type of card. You know, people are really hot on Sword Shield Evolving Skies right now, so I'd rather turn this Shiny Noctowl into a couple of Evolving Skies amazing cards instead. So you can kind of work your way through with vendors here if they have a super niche card and you want that super niche card and you're willing to work together for it. So fun little story behind the Shiny Noctowl. The Shining Raichu, on the other hand, this was our first stop of the day at our most recent card show, and I had noticed on Instagram that this vendor that we love to work with had this card available. I messaged them saying, you know, have you already promised it to someone else, and is it available, and what kind of sticker are you looking to put on it? And so we talked back and forth, and we told them that we were going to end up taking it from them, but we need to see it in person first, of course. So we met up at the show last weekend. We immediately went to their booth, found the card, verified condition, and then paid the agreed upon price. We actually got the Muck from Aquapolis Holo at the same booth. Very, very nice indeed. So our most recent addition to the Neo Destiny binder. And last but not least, unfortunately we're skipping over the Steelix, and we're pulling out Hust 1 Arm. Shining Tyranitar from Neo Destiny is well known for having this in its description. It is so powerful, it can knock down a mountain with Hust 1 Arm. I don't think they ever corrected this issue, so Hust 1 Arm is the only copies you can find. So if the corrected copy exists out there, it's probably worth way more than this. I've never seen that one exists. We picked this up from a local vendor named Level X TCG. Fantastic guys, and they were borderline between sending it for grading or selling it to me raw, and we ended up coming to a deal, and I think we're both very happy with it, although I personally think if they would have graded it, they would have got some extra money out of it, because this card is very clean indeed. All right, so 38 minutes. Blasting past my my estimation of 30 minutes for this video. I already knew it was going to be long. All right, so that's that. Absolutely fantastic set. It's one of my favorite sets of all time. I love all the Pokemon. I love the theming. I love the trainers. I love the everything. Here's a nice little look at the first edition Holos one last time. And then I will flip back to the beginning of the Unlimiteds. And I will ask you guys, how do you guys feel about the theming of this set? How do you feel about the Shinings versus the normal Holos? Do you like the Shinings? Or do you prefer the crystals from Aquapolis Skyridge? Or do you prefer the stars from the EX era? What kind of cards are your grails? Would you love to have a binder like this, including some of those? Would you prefer to pack a set of a certain set that has grails you enjoy? Or would you just like to go straight for the grails from everything? So thank you guys for watching. This was a fantastic episode. I absolutely loved filming this. I love talking about Pokemon, and this is one of my favorite sets of all time. So, if you want to see any specific sets, mention them in the comments. I'd be very happy to get to it. A few days ago, I posted Black and White Base Master Set at the request of a commenter. So, next could be you. Alright, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.